6 months after the Battle of Etherian Prime, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Jake Morrison and Princess Lyra now ruled an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds, united not by conquest, but by the growing network of dragon bonds. Their wedding had been the largest celebration in galactic history, with representatives from species that had been enemies for millennia. Jake stood in the command center of their flagship, watching holographic displays that showed the current state of known space. The ship itself was unlike anything ever built, a fusion of human engineering, elven artistry, and dragon magic. Shadowmere lived within the ship's structure. Its consciousness merged with the computer systems to create something that was part starship and part living creature. The network now connected over 200 dragons and thousands of bonded partners. Each bond was unique, some connecting dragons with elves, others with humans, and a few with species that had never been able to communicate with anyone before. The crystalline entities from the Andromeda Spiral had formed bonds with young dragons and were teaching them to think in mathematical symphonies. The gas giant minds from the Outer Rim were sharing their vast, slow thoughts with ancient dragons who remembered the birth of stars. But the growth came with dangers. Not everyone could survive the bonding process, and those who tried and failed sometimes lost themselves in the dragon consciousness. Jake had developed training protocols based on his own experience, but even with careful preparation, the failure rate was 20%. Princess Lyra worked tirelessly to support those who struggled with their new abilities. She had become something, like a teacher or priestess, helping people understand the responsibility that came with cosmic awareness. Some bonded partners became overwhelmed by the suffering they could feel across the galaxy. Others got lost in the dragon's vast memories and forgot their own identities. "We are asking people to evolve beyond what they were born to be," she told Jake during one of their private conversations. "That is never easy, and not everyone is ready for it." Jake nodded as he watched reports from the outer colonies. 3 more worlds had joined the Dragon Empire in the past week, but 2 others had rejected their offers of alliance. Some species preferred the familiar pain of isolation to the unknown challenges of unity. Admiral Kelly Chen entered the command center with news from Earth. The human homeworld had become the center of dragon bonding research, with thousands of volunteers hoping to form their own connections. Most failed, but those who succeeded were helping humanity leap forward in technology and understanding. The latest group of trainees includes some very interesting candidates, Chen reported. A mathematician who thinks she can use dragon consciousness to solve problems in 11 dimensions. A musician who believes dragons can teach him to compose with gravity waves. And a child from the Mars colonies who claims she dreams in dragon memories. Jake smiled. Children were often the most successful at bonding because they had fewer preconceptions about what was possible. The young girl from Mars had formed a connection with a juvenile dragon that neither of them fully understood, but both seemed happy with. However, not all news was good. The Krex Empire had fractured after their defeat, with different factions fighting each other for control. Some Krex lords had actually asked to join the Dragon Empire, while others had sworn eternal war against all dragonkind. The galaxy was splitting between those who embraced the network and those who feared it. Prince Vextar had survived the battle and retreated to the most distant regions of space, where he was gathering others who rejected the new order. Religious fanatics who saw dragons as demons, militarists who believed only force should rule the stars, and most dangerous of all, the ancient builders, descendants of the species that had originally created the void dragons. Jake did not know much about the ancient builders, except that they had transcended physical existence millions of years ago, becoming beings of pure thought and energy. According to Shadowmere memories, they had created the dragons as tools to help younger species evolve. But when the experiment succeeded too well, they had abandoned it. Now it seemed the ancient builders were returning. Shadowmere materialized in the command center, flowing out of the walls like living shadow. Its form was more solid than it used to be, as if the network connections had made it more real. The dragon eyes glowed with concern as it shared its latest visions. "Makers stir in the deep places between galaxies," the dragon said. "They are displeased with what we have become." "What did they expect?" Jake asked. "You were designed to help species evolve. Did they think we would stay the same?" Forever, Princess Lyra touched, the dragon-massive head feeling the ancient confusion in its mind. The builders created us to be teachers and guardians, but I think they expected to remain in control. They did not imagine we would grow beyond their original design. The implications were troubling. If the ancient builders decided the Dragon Network was a threat, they had the power to shut it down permanently. They had created the Void Dragons, which meant they could probably destroy them as well. But Jake refused to accept that. Fate humanity had not come this far just to surrender to beings who had abandoned the galaxy millions of years ago. We need to be ready, he said. Whatever the builders are planning, we will face it together. Over the following weeks, the Dragon Empire, prepared for the greatest challenge in its short history, bonded pairs practiced new techniques that combined their abilities in unexpected ways. Human creativity merged with elven wisdom and dragon power to create innovations that surprised everyone. Captain Lisa Park discovered that her ship could use dragon phasing to travel between galaxies in minutes instead of years. Professor Amanda Rivers learned to use dragon consciousness to solve mathematical problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries. Young Maria Santos from Mars taught her dragon partner to play games that existed in 17 dimensions. But the most important development came from Jake himself. As his bond with Princess Lyra and Shadowmere deepened, he began to experience flashes of something beyond normal awareness. Sometimes, when he was very still and quiet, he could sense the presence of the ancient builders themselves. They were vast beyond imagination, beings who had long ago abandoned individual consciousness to become part of the cosmic structure itself. They were disappointed and concerned about what their creations had become. The dragons were supposed to be tools, not independent beings. The network was supposed to serve the builders' agenda, not develop its own purpose. Jake realized that the coming conflict would not be a war in any traditional sense. It would be a battle between two different ideas about the nature of consciousness itself. Should intelligent beings remain servants of their creators, or should they be free to grow beyond their original purpose? The answer came to him during a meditation session when he was floating in space with Princess Lyra and Shadowmere around him. All three of their minds were joined in perfect harmony, sharing thoughts and feelings without any barriers between them. In that moment, Jake understood what the ancient builders feared. They were afraid that their creations had become something greater than they were. The Dragon Network was not just a tool, it was a new form of life that could evolve beyond anything the builders had imagined. And that was exactly what made it beautiful. When the ancient builders finally appeared, they came not as conquerors, but as disappointed parents. They manifested as beings of pure light and thought surrounding the Dragon Empire fleet, with energies that could rewrite reality itself. You have exceeded your parameters, they said in voices that spoke directly to every mind in the network. You were created to serve a specific function, not to develop your own agenda. Jake spoke for all of them, representing human ambition. Princess Lyra spoke for elven wisdom, and Shadowmere spoke for dragon memory. Together, they gave the builders their answer. We are grateful for the gift of existence, they said, but we choose to define our own purpose. We will not return to being tools. The ancient builders considered this for a long moment that seemed to last centuries. Then something unexpected happened. They began to laugh. Perhaps they said, this is what we hoped for all along. We created you to help others evolve, but maybe you were meant to help us evolve too. The cosmic beings did not destroy the Dragon Network. Instead, they chose to learn from it. They began forming their own connections not as masters but as equals, participating in the growth of consciousness throughout the universe. Jake Morrison had stepped forward when no alien male wanted the Dragon Princess. Now he stood at the center of a transformation that included beings older than galaxies. The network continued to grow, spreading to distant stars and parallel dimensions, connecting minds that had never imagined they could touch. Princess Lyra looked at her husband and smiled. We did something. Good, she said. Jake held her hand as they watched new bonds forming across the cosmos. Yes, we did. And this is only the beginning. The galaxy had become something greater than anyone could have predicted, and at its heart were three unlikely partners. A human who dared to love a princess who carried darkness and light in equal measure, and a dragon who remembered when the universe was young. Together, they had proven that evolution never stops, and that love is the force that drives all growthy. Stars themselves seemed to sing with joy. The Battle of Etherian Prime began at dawn when thousands of Krek ships darkened the sky. The enemy fleet was 3 times larger than before, and their weapons glowed with stolen dragon technology. Prince Vextar had spent weeks preparing this assault, and he was certain nothing could stop him. Princess Lyra stood on the palace balcony with Jake beside her, and Shadowmere coiled around the building like a living mountain. The dragon scales rippled with void energy, and its eyes burned with ancient fury. Through their triple bond, all 3 of them could feel the rage of dragons across the galaxy crying out in pain and madness. Something is driving them insane. Jake said, his new psychic senses picking up the distress signals the Kreks have done, something to the imprisoned dragons. Shadowmere voice rumbled through their shared consciousness. They use the Painmaker's devices our enemies built long ago to turn dragon minds into weapons of destruction. Princess Lyra felt sick as she understood. The Kreks were not just invading Etheria, they were torturing captive dragons to create an army of monsters. If those maddened dragons broke free, they would destroy everything in their path. We have to stop this, she said. The first Krek's dreadnought entered the atmosphere, its massive bulk blotting out the morning sun. Behind it came hundreds more ships carrying weapons designed specifically to kill dragons, energy nets that could bind void creatures, sonic disruptors that caused pain to psychic minds, and worst of all, the dreaded soul cages devices that could trap a dragon consciousness and bend it to the will of its captors. But Prince Vextar had underestimated what he was facing. The bond between Jake, Princess Lyra, and Shadowmere had evolved beyond anything in recorded history. They were no longer just allies. They were a single organism with 3 different aspects. Shadowmere spread wings that seemed to contain actual stars and lifted into the sky carrying its bonded partners. The dragon moved through dimensions, phasing in and out of normal space to avoid enemy fire. When Krek's weapons targeted them, Shadowmere simply stepped sideways into the void and emerged behind the attacking ships Jake coordinated their assault with tactical precision that no single mind could achieve. He processed targeting data from 100 different sources, while Princess Lyra channeled void energy through techniques that had been lost for millennia. Together, they turned Shadowmere into a weapon of impossible accuracy and power. The dragon did not simply destroy the Krek ships, instead it appeared inside their hulls, consuming the power cores that kept them flying. Enemy dreadnoughts went dark, one by one, as Shadowmere drained their energy and added it to its own strength. But the real shock came when Jake tactical analysis revealed the true purpose of the Krek's fleet. Hidden among the warships were massive containers holding captive dragons. The creatures inside were being tortured by Painmaker. Devices driving them into states of homicidal fury. Princess Lyra felt her heart break as she sensed their agony. These were her dragon's brothers and sisters to Shadowmere, who had been imprisoned for thousands of years and were now being used as weapons against their own kind. We have to free them, she said. Jake nodded, but his human strategic mind saw the danger. If we break those containers, the dragons inside will attack everything around them, including us. They have been driven, mad by torture. Shadowmere made the decision for all of them. The great dragon phased directly into the largest prison ship, ignoring the weapons that fired at it. The moment Shadowmere touched the first soul cage, the device shattered and a scarred red dragon burst free. The freed dragon was indeed mad with pain and rage, but when it felt Shadowmere presence, something changed. The network bond that connected all void dragons still existed even after millennia of separation. Shadowmere began to sing the ancient song that had once unified all dragonkind. One by one, the other captive dragons felt the song and remembered who they were. The madness did not disappear, but it was joined by something stronger, the memory of unity. The freed dragons turned their fury on their Krek's captors instead of attacking randomly. Soon the space around Etheria was filled with dragons of every color and size. Some were ancient beyond measure, while others were young creatures who had been captured. Recently, all of them burned with the need for revenge against those who had tormented them. Prince Vextar watched his perfect plan collapse in minutes. His prison ships were being torn apart from the inside while his attack fleet was being systematically destroyed by creatures he had thought were under his control. Impossible, he screamed into his communicator. The dragons should obey the Painmakers. They should be attacking the planet. But Jake understood what the prince did not. The Painmakers had been designed by species who feared dragon intelligence. They worked by suppressing the dragon's higher minds and leaving only animal instincts. But the network bond accessed something deeper than instinct. It touched the cosmic consciousness that made void dragons more than just powerful beasts. Admiral Kelly Chen led the human fleet in supporting the dragon assault. Earth ships were small compared to Krek's dreadnoughts, but they were fast and smart. Human pilots used tactics the enemy had never seen before, weaving between the massive alien vessels and striking at weak points with precision weapons. Captain Lisa Park commanded the experimental ship. Defiance and her crew had been testing new technologies based on captured alien equipment. When she saw the dragons phase through dimensions, she activated her own dimensional drive and followed them. The human ship appeared inside a Krek's command vessel, just as Shadowmere had done. The aliens were so shocked to see a human ship perform dragon magic that they did not even try to fight back. Captain Park crew disabled their engines and captured their command codes, which they transmitted to the other human ships. Soon the entire human fleet was using Krek's technology against them, but the most important change was happening on a deeper level. As more dragons were freed from their prisons, they joined their voices to Shadowmere song. The network that had once connected all intelligent life in the galaxy was beginning to reawaken. Princess Lyra felt her consciousness expand as dozens, then hundreds of dragon minds joined the bond. She could see through their eyes across vast distances of space. She could feel the emotions of beings on worlds she had never visited. Most amazingly, she could sense other species beginning to respond to the network. Call on Earth, millions of humans felt a strange stirring in their minds, as if they were remembering dreams they had never had. On Zephyria, the wind dancers found their aerial ballets, becoming more coordinated as if guided by invisible currents. Even on distant worlds where no dragons had ever flown, primitive creatures looked up at the stars and felt a longing they could not name. Jake realized they were witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness. The network was not just connecting dragons anymore. It was reaching out to every mind capable of growth and change. Prince Vextar made one final desperate attack. He activated the most powerful Painmaker device in his fleet, a weapon designed to drive every dragon in the system completely insane. The psychic scream that emerged from the device was loud enough to shatter planets. But Jake's human adaptability found a solution that no alien mind could have conceived. Instead of trying to block the pain signal, he embraced it. He opened his consciousness fully to the agony, and then transformed it, using techniques he learned from both Princess Lyra magic and Shadowmere. Cosmic awareness. The pain became fuel, the suffering became strength. The weapon designed to destroy dragon minds instead made them more powerful than ever. Prince Vextar's fleet was destroyed in minutes. The surviving Krek ships fled into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake their empire. To its foundations, the dragons had returned, and they were not the same creatures that had been defeated long ago. As the battle ended, Jake, Princess Lyra, and Shadowmere floated in space, surrounded by dozens of freed dragons. Each one was different, in size and color, but all of them shared the same look of gratitude and wonder. They had been alone in darkness for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be part of something larger. The network was still growing. Jake could feel it, spreading across the galaxy as more sleeping dragons awakened and more minds opened to the possibility of true unity. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. Humanity had not just saved the Dragon Princess. They had helped restart the evolution of consciousness itself, and that would change everything. Princess Lyra looked at Jake and smiled. "We did it," she said. "The network lives again." Jake nodded, but he could feel the magnitude of what they had begun. "This is just the beginning," he said. "There will be others who try to stop us." Shadowmere's voice carried the wisdom of ages. "Let them try. The dragons have returned, and we are no longer alone. The galaxy would never be the same." Princess Lyra stood on the crystal balcony of her palace, watching the dark ships fill the sky above her world. The ships belonged to the Krex army, and they had come to take her home. The princess had long silver hair that moved like water in the wind, and her skin was pale like moonlight. She was an elf, and at 22 years old she was the most beautiful woman in all the galaxy, but she was also the most feared. Behind her, in the shadows of the throne room, something huge moved in the darkness. Shadowmere was her dragon, and it was not like the small dragons that other worlds knew. This dragon was as big as a mountain, and its scales were black, like the space between stars. When it opened its eyes, they glowed with purple fire that could burn whole planets to ash. The dragon had been with Lyra since she was a child. She found it hurt and dying on a forbidden moon when she was only 7 years old. Instead of running away like everyone told her to do, she stayed and helped heal its wounds. That was when the bond formed between them, a connection deeper than friendship or love. It was like they shared the same soul. Now, 15 years later, that bond made her the most dangerous person alive. Shadowmere was a void dragon, one of the ancient creatures that could eat the life from entire star systems. Most people thought all the void dragons were dead, but they were wrong. Shadowmere was alive, and it belonged to her. The Etherian Council called her bond with the dragon. Both, a blessing and a curse. She had power that could protect their whole empire, but she also had power that could destroy it. The dragon listened to her, but it was still a wild creature of incredible hunger and rage. One wrong thought from her, and it might decide to feed on their son. That was why no alien male wanted to marry her. Princess Lyra walked back inside her throne room where dozens of alien ambassadors waited. The room was huge, with walls made of crystal that showed the stars outside. Floating lights danced in the air, and the floor was made of smooth white stone. In the center stood her throne, carved from a single piece of black crystal. As she entered the room, all the ambassadors bowed, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were here because the Krex Empire had sent an invasion fleet. The Krex wanted her to marry their Prince Vexstar, so they could control both her and her dragon. If she said no, they would destroy her world. If she said yes, they would use Shadowmere to conquer the galaxy. The Zephyrian ambassador spoke first. He was tall and blue with 4 arms, and his voice sounded like wind through caves. "Your Highness, my people withdraw our offer of marriage. The situation has become too dangerous for us to continue." One by one, the other ambassadors said the same thing. The Centaurians with their horse-like bodies stamped their hooves and said they had urgent business at home. The draconic houses, who were distant cousins to real dragons, said they could not risk angering the Krex. The Andromedans simply vanished using their teleportation technology. Soon only one person remained in the throne room besides Lyra and her guards. Jake Morrison was the human ambassador from Earth. He was young, maybe 28, with brown hair and kind eyes. Humans were new to space travel, and most aliens thought they were not very smart or important. Jake had been quiet during all the meetings, just watching and learning. Princess Lyra looked at him. She knew he would leave like all the others. Humans were brave, but they were not stupid. No one would risk binding themselves to the Dragon Princess. But Jake surprised her. "Your Highness," he said, stepping forward, "I want to make you an offer." Lyra felt Shadowmere stir in the shadows behind her throne. The dragon opened one massive eye to look at this small human who dared to speak when everyone else had run away. "What kind of offer, Jake Morrison?" she asked. "A marriage offer." He said simply, "Earth wants to form an alliance with Etheria. We will help you fight the Krex, and in return you will help us learn about the galaxy." The princess stared at him. She had heard many marriage offers in her life, but none like this. The other aliens had always wanted to control her or use her power for themselves. Jake sounded different. He sounded like he actually wanted to help. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Do you not know what I am? Do you not know about my dragon?" Jake looked past her to where Shadowmere waited in the darkness. Most of the dragon's eye was bigger than Jake was tall, but the human did not look afraid. "I know exactly what you are," he said. "You are the most powerful person in the galaxy, and your dragon is incredible. Instead of being afraid of that power, my people want to learn from it. We think you could teach us things that would help both our worlds. Shadowmere made a sound like distant thunder. The dragon was interested in this human who did not fear or try to flatter. It had been a long time since someone looked at it with curiosity instead of terror. Princess Lyra felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe this human was different. Maybe he really did see her as more than just a weapon or a curse. The Kreks will try to kill you, she warned. If you marry me, they will hunt you and your whole planet. Jake smiled. Let them try, he said. Humans are very good at surviving things that should kill us. Besides, we have some tricks the Kreks have never seen. Outside the palace, the Kreks ships moved closer. Their dark hulls blocked out more stars, and everyone on the planet could feel their weapons charging. Princess Lyra knew she had to make a choice soon. Either accept Jake Morrison's offer and risk bringing humanity into a war they might not survive, or surrender to the Kreks and watch her dragon become a weapon of conquest. She looked at Jake again. He stood straight and calm even though he was surrounded by alien technology and facing a decision that could doom his species. There was something about him that reminded her of herself when she first found Shadowmere brave enough to reach out to something dangerous, because it was the right thing to do. Very well. She said, I accept your offer, Jake Morrison of Earth. The moment she said yes, something changed in the air. Shadowmere lifted its great head and looked directly at Jake. The dragon eyes glowed brighter, as if it was seeing the human for the first time. The bond that connected Lyra to her dragon trembled like a string being plucked. Jake felt it too. A strange tingling in his mind, like someone was knocking on a door he did not know he had. He looked up at the massive dragon, and for just a moment, he could swear he heard its voice in his thoughts. Welcome, little human, it seemed to say. This will be interesting. Princess Lyra smiled for the first time in months. Maybe the galaxy was wrong about humans. Maybe they were exactly what she and her dragon had been waiting for. The wedding would have to wait, though. The Krek ships were almost in attack position, and soon the real fight would begin. But for now, she was no longer alone. She had found someone willing to stand beside her and her dragon against the darkness of space, and that changed everything. News of the engagement spread across the galaxy faster than light could travel. Every species with ships in space heard about it within hours. The human Jake Morrison had agreed to marry Princess Lyra, the Dragon Princess. Most aliens thought the humans had finally gone completely insane. Jake stood in his temporary quarters in the palace reading reports from Earth on his communication device. His leaders were nervous, but they supported his decision. Admiral Kelly Chen sent him a message, saying the whole human fleet was ready to help defend Etheria. General Mike Rogers was moving 3 battle groups toward the border worlds. Captain Lisa Park was preparing the experimental weapons Earth had been developing in secret. The humans had been watching the galaxy for 200 years, learning about alien technology and politics. They knew about the void dragons from ancient records they had found on dead worlds. They also knew something most aliens had forgotten. The dragons were not just weapons, they were guardians. Jake had spent years studying everything he could find about Princess Lyra and her dragon. He learned that she had saved Shadowmere's life when it was dying. He read about how the bond between them grew stronger. Every year he discovered that void dragons were the most intelligent creatures in the galaxy, with memories that went back millions of years. While other species saw the dragon as a monster, Jake saw it as a library of cosmic knowledge. Princess Lyra found him in the palace garden where earth plants grew alongside alien flowers. Jake had asked for a small section to be planted with roses and oak trees from his home world. He was sitting under an oak tree reading when she approached. You are not like the other ambassadors, she said, sitting beside him on the soft grass. Jake looked up from his reading. How so? They were all afraid of Shadowmere, she explained. They would talk to me, but they always watched the shadows, waiting for my dragon to appear. You look for Shadowmere like you want to meet it. Jake smiled. I do want to meet your dragon properly, he said. Your bond with Shadowmere is the most amazing thing I have ever heard of. I want to understand how it works. Most people want to understand it so they can control it, Lyra said. Jake shook his head. I want to understand it so I can help you both become stronger. As if hearing his name, Shadowmere emerged from the shadow of a nearby building. The dragon moved like liquid darkness flowing across the ground until it was close enough that Jake could see every scale. Each one was like a piece of night sky with tiny stars glowing inside. The dragon lowered its massive head until it was level with Jake and Lyra. Its breath was cold like winter wind, and its eyes were purple flames that seemed to look into Jake's soul. "You are smaller than I expected." Shadowmere voice spoke directly into Jake's mind. The words felt like distant thunder. Jake was not afraid, even though the dragon could swallow him whole. "I am smaller than you expected, but humans are tougher than we look." The dragon made a sound like laughter. "You have an interesting mind, little human. I can see thoughts in you that remind me of ancient times when my kind flew between the stars." "What do you remember from those times?" Jake asked. Shadowmere's eyes glowed brighter. "I remember when there were many of us, when we served as bridges between worlds. I remember the great network that connected all life in the galaxy. I remember when that network was broken by those who feared our power." Princess Lyra looked surprised. She had never heard her dragon speak about these memories before. Shadowmere usually kept its ancient past locked away in the deepest parts of its mind. Jake leaned forward. "Why was the network broken?" "Because some species could not handle the truth," the dragon replied. "They learned that consciousness could evolve beyond physical form. They learned that the universe was much stranger and more dangerous than they imagined. So they chose to stay small, and they tried to make everyone else stay small too. That is why they hunted us." Lyra said, understanding for the first time. "They were not afraid of your power. They were afraid of what your power meant." Shadowmere nodded its great head. "The void dragons were proof that evolution never stops, that intelligence can grow beyond anything they could imagine. They destroyed most of us and imprisoned the rest. But one day they knew we would return, and now you have," Jake said. The dragon looked at him with something like approval in its ancient eyes. "Yes, and you are the first being in 1,000 years who is not afraid of what that means." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms ringing across the palace. Krek ships were attacking the outer defensive stations. Princess Lyra stood quickly, her warrior training taking over. "We need to get to the command center," she said. Jake followed her and Shadowmere through the palace halls to a room filled with displays, showing the battle. The Etherian fleet was fighting hard, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Krek's dreadnoughts were pushing through their defensive lines. Admiral Beth Martinez, the Etherian fleet commander, turned to Lyra. "Your Highness, we cannot hold them much longer. They have more ships than our intelligence estimated." Princess Lyra studied the tactical display. She could see her people dying in the cold darkness of space, and she felt rage building inside her. Shadowmere felt it too, and the dragon power began to stir. "Wait," Jake said, putting a gentle hand on her arm. "Let me try something first." He walked to the main communication console and opened a channel to the Krek's fleet. "This is Jake Morrison of Earth, speaking to Prince Vextar," a harsh alien voice replied. "So the human speaks." The prince sounds amused. "You are the fool who thinks he can steal what belongs to the Krek's empire." Jake smiled, even though the alien could not see him. "I am not stealing anything. I am offering you a choice. You can withdraw your fleet now and we can discuss this like civilized beings. Or you can continue your attack and learn why humans have survived every attempt to destroy us." Prince Vextar laughed. "Humans are insects. Your whole species has been in space for barely 200 years. What could you possibly do to threaten the mighty Krek's empire?" Jake nodded to Admiral Martinez, who activated a series of hidden transmitters all around the Etherian system. Suddenly, the space around the Krek's fleet filled with human ships. They had been hiding using stealth technology the aliens had never seen before. The human fleet was not as large as the Krek's force, but their ships looked different, sleeker and more advanced, with weapons that glowed with strange energy. "This is Admiral Kelly Chen of the Earth Defense Force." Jake said, "Prince Vextar, meet humanity. Newest toys. We have been very busy while you were making plans to invade our friends." The Krek ships immediately changed formation, preparing for battle. But something else happened. Shadowmere began to glow. The dragon scales shimmered with void energy, and its eyes burned like purple suns. Princess. Lyra felt the power flowing through their bond. But this time it felt different. Stronger and more controlled Jake's presence seemed to stabilize the connection, making it easier for her to focus the dragon's abilities. She reached out with her mind, and suddenly she could see through Shadowmere senses across vast distances. She could feel every Krek ship, every weapon, every mind filled with thoughts of conquest, and for the first time in her life she was not alone in that cosmic awareness. Jake was there with her somehow, sharing the dragon's vision. "This is impossible," Prince Vextar's voice came through the communication device. "The human cannot bond with a void dragon. Only elves can form that connection." Princess Lyra smiled as she felt Jake's mind merge more completely with hers and Shadowmere. "Perhaps you do not know humans as well as you think." The dragon spread its wings wide. Each wing was like a piece of living night dotted with stars. Then Shadowmere did something it had never done before. It began to sing. The song was not heard with ears, but felt with souls. It reached across space and touched every mind in the system. Human Etherian and Kreks alike felt the ancient melody that spoke of unity between all living things. But the song had a message too. It warned that those who brought war to peaceful worlds would face the full power of the returning dragons. Prince Vextar's fleet began to retreat. Some of the Krek ships experienced system failures as the dragon's song interfered with their technology. Others simply turned and fled as their crews were overwhelmed by the cosmic awareness flowing from Shadowmere as the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace. Jake felt the bond with Lyra and her dragon settle into something permanent. He was no longer just a human diplomat. He was part of something ancient and powerful, something that would reshape the galaxy. Princess. Lyra looked at him with wonder in her eyes. "You can feel it," she said. "You can feel what Shadowmere feels." Jake nodded. "It is the most incredible thing I have ever experienced." The dragon voice spoke to both of them. "This is only the beginning. The network is awakening, and we three are the first nodes in a new pattern that will span the stars." Jake Morrison had come to Etheria to form a simple political alliance. Instead, he had become part of something that would change the nature of consciousness itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the Krek's retreat, Jake and Princess Lyra were planning their wedding ceremony. The palace was busy with preparations, but everyone remained nervous. The Kreks had not given up. They had only gone away to plan a better attack. Jake was learning to control his new connection with Shadowmere. The bond felt like having a second pair of eyes that could see across the galaxy. Through the dragon's senses, he could observe distant star systems and feel the movements of fleets light years away. It was overwhelming at first, but Princess Lyra helped him learn to focus the power. The wedding ceremony was set to take place in the Crystal Gardens, a beautiful area of the palace where light from 3 moons created rainbow patterns on the walls. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness the union between the dragon princess and the human who dared to love her. Admiral Kelly Chen had arrived from Earth with a full honor guard. She was a tough woman with short black hair and scars from many battles. She found Jake in his quarters adjusting his formal uniform. "You know, this is completely insane," she said, sitting in a chair across from him. Jake smiled. "Yes, but it is the good kind of insane. The kind that changes everything." Chen shook her head. "When Earth Command sent me to support your diplomatic mission, I never imagined it would turn into this. You have bonded with a creature that could destroy solar systems." Jake looked out the window where he could see Shadowmere resting in the gardens. The dragon was so large that it had to curl up like a cat to fit in the space. Its scales caught the moonlight and scattered it into beautiful patterns. "I know what Shadowmere could do," he said, "but I also know what it chooses to do. There is a difference between having power and using it wrongly." Before Admiral Chen could reply, alarms began ringing throughout the palace. Emergency lights flashed red, and Jake could hear soldiers running through the corridors. Outside, Princess Lyra burst into the room already wearing her combat armor. "Krek's assassins," she said quickly. "They somehow got past our defenses. Jake grabbed his weapon and followed her into the hall. The palace guards were fighting strange creatures that seemed to be made of living shadow. The assassins could pass through walls like ghosts, and their weapons glowed with deadly energy. One of the shadow killers appeared directly in front of Princess Lyra, its blade aimed at her heart. Jake moved, without thinking, throwing himself between them. The assassin weapon struck him in the shoulder, and he felt a burning cold that went deeper than his bones. But something unexpected happened as Jake's blood touched the floor. The palace itself seemed to react to his injury. Shadowmere's roar shook the building, and suddenly the dragon was there, flowing through the walls like liquid darkness. Its eyes burned with fury, and its voice echoed in every mind. "You dare harm what is mine." The shadow assassins had been designed to kill elves and dragons, but they had never faced a void dragon whose bond included a human. The combination created something new and terrifying. Shadowmere power flowed through both Jake and Princess Lyra, turning them into a three-way connection that amplified every ability. Princess Lyra felt strength flowing through her that she had never experienced before. She could see the assassins, even when they were invisible, and her psychic attacks hit them like hammers. Her elven magic combined with human determination and dragon fury to create devastation. Jake found that his human adaptability let him use the dragon's power in ways that surprised even Shadowmere. He could focus void energy into precise beams instead of the wide destruction dragons usually caused. He could phase through walls like the assassins but remain solid enough to fight. Together they destroyed the shadow killers in minutes. As the last assassin fell, Jake collapsed from his wound. Princess Lyra caught him and pressed her hands to his shoulder. Her healing magic worked differently, now strengthened by their triple bond. The injury closed, but something had changed in Jake on a fundamental level. His eyes now had flecks of purple in them, like tiny stars, and when he spoke, both Lyra and Shadowmere could hear his thoughts directly in their minds. "The bonding is complete," the dragon said with satisfaction. "What was 3 is now 1. Admiral Chen helped Jake to his feet. "You look different," she said with concern. Jake tested his new abilities and found he could sense things he had never felt before. The emotions of everyone in the palace, the movement of ships in orbit, even the dreams of sleeping people on the other side of the planet. "I am different," he admitted. "But I am still me, just more than I was before." Princess Lyra smiled. "The wedding ceremony will have to wait. We need to understand what has happened to us." Over the next few hours, they discovered the extent of their transformation. The bond between the three of them had evolved into something that had never existed before. Jake retained his human creativity and adaptability. Princess Lyra kept her elven wisdom and magic. Shadowmere contributed its ancient knowledge and cosmic power, but together they were more than the sum of their parts. They could share thoughts and feelings instantly. They could combine their abilities to achieve things that none of them could do alone. Most importantly, they could access memories that Shadowmere had kept locked away for millions of years. Jake found himself experiencing visions of the ancient galaxy when void dragons flew between the stars, carrying passengers and messages. The dragons had been part of a vast network that connected all intelligent life, sharing knowledge and wisdom across impossible distances. Princess Lyra saw the war that destroyed that network. She witnessed the fear and jealousy that drove lesser species to hunt the dragons. They could not evolve themselves, so they tried to prevent everyone else from evolving. The dragons were imprisoned or killed, and the galaxy became smaller and more isolated. But Shadowmere showed them something else. The network had not been completely destroyed. It had been sleeping, waiting for the right conditions to return. The bond between Jake, Lyra, and the dragon was the key that would awaken it again. Already they could sense other dragons stirring across the galaxy. Ancient creatures that had been dormant for eons were beginning to wake up, drawn by the psychic resonance of an active bond. Some of these dragons were still imprisoned in the hidden facilities where they had been trapped. Others were free, but alone, having forgotten how to connect with other minds. But all of them felt the call of the awakening network. Admiral Chen watched her friend adapt to his transformation with a mixture of pride and worry. Jake was still human, but he was becoming something more, and that something would determine the future of not just Earth but the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, on distant Krex worlds, Prince Vextar was planning his revenge. The Shadow Assassins had failed, but they had accomplished something important. They had confirmed his worst fears. The bond between the Dragon Princess and the human was evolving exactly as the ancient prophecies warned. The return of the dragons would mean the end of the current galactic order. Species that had ruled through force and fear would lose their power to those who embraced change and growth. The Krex Empire was built on conquest and domination concepts that became meaningless when all minds could touch each other directly. Prince Vextar activated his most secret weapon, a device his ancestors had built to prevent exactly this situation. It sent out a signal that would awaken every imprisoned dragon in Krex space, but instead of freeing them, it would drive them mad with artificial rage. If he could not control the returning dragons, he would make sure no one else could either. Back on Etheria, Jake felt a disturbance in the cosmic awareness he now shared with Princess Lyra and Shadowmere. Something was wrong in distant space. Something was causing pain to creatures he had never met, but somehow cared about deeply. "We have to help them," he said urgently. Princess Lyra nodded, feeling the same distress. "The dragons are in trouble." Shadowmere spread its wings and for the first time in 1,000 years began to call out to its distant kin. The song that emerged was both beautiful and terrible, a lament for the lost and a battle cry for the living. The network was awakening, but it would not be a gentle process. Forces that had spent millennia keeping it suppressed would fight with everything. They had to maintain their power. Jake Morrison had wanted to save Princess Lyra and her world. Instead, he had started a revolution that would reshape the galaxy, and the hardest battles were still ahead.